Today, Russian propaganda is harder to hide than ever. Every lie can be filmed, archived, uploaded and exposed. And yet Russian influence continues to spread. Not loudly, not openly, but through people, networks and access. In the US, this structure appears repeatedly, adapting faster than many expect. Our guest has made it his work to expose this system and to confront Russian disinformation where it operates most comfortably. He joins me from New York. Oleks, Taran, welcome. Hi, Oleks.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
So, Oleks, you live in New York, but your work is connected to Russia's war mainly in the informational space. And you are a frequent visitor to Congress, as I understand it. Can you name me one moment in recent months when you clearly felt that Russian propaganda was actually influencing decisions or public attitude in the United States?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. Well, recently, a couple of weeks ago, we've traveled to Congress with our team to advocate for key advocacy priorities right now on the Ukrainian agenda in the United States. And we stumbled across a couple groups that were dressed as religious individuals who spoke Russian. And upon approaching them and pretending to be an American-speaking American and not speaking Russian, I actually was able to get a hold of their materials and to see what they are trying to advocate for in Congress, which was so-called Christian persecution in Ukraine, persecution of Christians.
Yeah, actually, my next question was about that, because that video became viral on social media.
Putin, who was speaking to United Nations, he was poisoned with heavy metals a week later because government hired people and they poisoned him. By Zelensky. So it's just very sad. It's like 1918 revolution. What's happened? Same happened now.
So did you have any result after publishing that video?
Yes, of course. Well, I immediately appealed to Ukrainians in the United States to mobilize and to counter this disinformation, this propaganda. Their main talking points in Congress is that Ukraine is persecuting Christians, which is absolutely false. It's a distorted reality that Russia likes to exploit. They work through numerous networks in the United States to populate this disinformation and to communicate it to lawmakers, but also to their electorate, to Americans, which sometimes is effective. Immediately publishing this video, I asked the Ukrainian community in the United States to begin investigating these groups and to unite together to counter this propaganda on a national level. Of course, there was a tremendous response. A lot of people viewed this video. Even Forbes published an article about this. Unfortunately, the article was taken down shortly after they received an inquiry from somewhere. Not quite sure how did that happen. But it appears that there is a clear influence of Russian propaganda in the United States that needs an institutional countering, and unfortunately, up until this moment, it hasn't been addressed yet.
Well, yeah, you're working under such a pressure. But Oleks, okay, what is the reaction inside congressional office when you directly telling them that please check who comes to you and what their messages are?
Well, as you know, the beauty of American democracy is that any person can freely walk into Congress and communicate with lawmakers. Of course, there has to be constituents who would do that, but that's how open the American democracy is. But Russia likes to exploit the strengths of its adversaries, in this case, United States. It likes to exploit the freedom of speech, the access to your elected officials, and through injecting their agents and infiltrating Congress with their propaganda campaigns like that. So, of course, we like to do the work against that, to counter this influence by bringing necessary materials and verified sources along with witnesses to these kinds of events, or to people who can actually, from the expert standpoint, counter this propaganda. We try to communicate with certain offices. What they try to do in this case, these groups, is go to offices in Congress which do not necessarily support Ukraine and to plead to them this propaganda. They're the most potential recipients of this, who would follow along potentially. That was their target. But there's also another congressman in the U.S. Congress, Congressman Wilson, who's a Republican and who's a vocal supporter for Ukraine. And they brought materials targeting Congressman Wilson, who has spoken out against the propaganda about so-called religious persecution of Christians in Ukraine, which is obviously false. So they target congressional leaders to spread their propaganda. They also target congressional leaders who are actively vocally against these campaigns.
Do you see often when congressmen are falling into this propagandist lie? The lady that you captured on camera with your company, and she was telling all the nonsense about Ukrainians, but still, do you see people are often falling for that?
Well, the good news is that these guys, they're not as advanced to be convincing. And I saw a congressman, he wasn't captured on the camera, but he was passing by the moment she was talking to me. And she actually ran up to him and stormed into him. That his team tried to hand him her materials. He just refused it and kept on going because it's not the way you do it. And thank God they don't know how to properly do it. But the issue is some congressional leaders do end up falling for this propaganda. And there is what I see a lot of sentiment in Ukrainian circles that they're somehow connected to Russians. Well, most of it is false. The congressional leaders may end up following some sort of propaganda, and our job as Ukrainians is to convince them that that is false and bring them real facts and expose this Russian lie, rather than believe that they're in some way advocating for Russia. That's not usually the case. The issue is we need to try to build a dialogue with everyone out there and to hear their points, to understand that there may be some disagreements, and then to build out this conversation based on facts and on the truth.
Yeah, Oleks, you know that the Kremlin, Russians, they're losing on the battlefield. Well, if they're not losing, they're definitely not moving forward. But they're, actively fighting hard for people's minds, as you said. And so what would you call Russia's most successful, I would say, informational campaign operation in the United States right now, except this religion stuff?
Well, there's quite a few. We've spoken to different offices. I think one of the major narratives that is pushed around is that Ukraine has a strong issue of corruption and that the aid is being stolen by Ukrainian government officials. Again, that the only way to counter that is to bring up facts. Of course, the recent scandal in public space caused certain turbulence, but it wasn't effective. Russians tried to exploit it. The Russians tried to grow this narrative and build upon it. That wasn't successful. All you have to do is to clearly state that we have strong anti-corruption institutions in Ukraine that are actively working to expose corruption and to counter it. And that's being addressed and dealt with. Ukraine is a functioning country, the functioning government, the functioning government institutions who are designed to counter corruption. And Ukrainian population is also holding Ukrainian government accountable for that. That's the narrative that is effective to counter this propaganda. But of course, corruption is one of the favorite Russian propaganda narratives that they like to exploit and use in the circles of lawmakers, but also the regular American public. And there's another one that I actually encountered yesterday near the White House as I was visiting Washington, D.C. and talking to a couple protesters near the White House. They stated that there is Nazis in Ukraine. As absurd as it may sound, Russia still likes to populate this narrative, and it seems to get a grip among the left side and the right side of the American politics, but it's more on the level of the population, and that needs historical exposure to give real facts about the history, and that Ukraine does not have any history with the Nazis.
At one of your interviews, you were explaining that you are a founder, a president of NGO, Svitanok, and you were explaining that to reach Americans, sometimes you have to shock them a little. Where did that understanding come from, and what point did NGO Svitanok realize that soft language simply doesn't work?
Well, I think it all comes from the nature of Ukraine's resilience and how we've been really effectively fighting against Russians throughout this war. As you know, I think the major factor that has been giving us a lot of success is not a standard way of thinking. We think out of box, and that gives us an opportunity to really effectively counter old Russian stiff system and way of thinking, which they follow. We get advantage in that, and that's what gives us ultimately success. So we realize that we need to somehow grasp attention of Americans. What we notice as Ukrainian Americans in the United States is that very often Americans focus shifts due to the different global agenda and politics. And our job as Ukrainian Americans is to bring it back and to concentrate it back on Ukraine. Sometimes that, of course, entails doing something visual that could be visually shocking, but that could grasp attention and then deliver the message through it. For example, we would do little skits on the major streets in the United States, dress up a woman in Russian clothes and put blood on her and have her rip apart toys representing how Russia is murdering children. Put a couple posters nearby with the messaging about Russia targeting civilians, about Russian recent attacks on Ukraine, and that proves to be effective. Americans film that, Americans pay attention to that, and of course the media picks that up really quickly. That's disturbing content, but that's the content that really takes attention and delivers the message.
Were you protesting in 2022 on Times Square?
Yes. So we started in February 24th, 2022, and we've been going ever since then.
Now I recall you where I saw you for the first time, because back then in September I was going through the United Nations Fellowship for Journalists, and I remember your voice, but I haven't seen you because of the huge crowd around you on the Times Square.
Putin counts on your difference. Putin counts that the world will ignore his crimes against humanity in Ukraine. He is desperate because he is losing. And appeasement is not peace. Ukraine deserves a fair peace. These based on the values of justice, on the values of accountability.
So NGO Svitanok grew out of that protest movements in New York after Russia's full-scale invasion. And what was the first turning point when you guys understood that this is no longer just protests? This has to become some structured organization.
Right. Well, we saw we saw a lot of organizations appear ever since the beginning of the full-scale war, and throughout the first year of the full-scale war, up until I would say summer 2023, everyone was really focused on humanitarian aid. The protest movement remained as the protest movement. What we saw as a niche that was not covered was informational warfare, ensuring that there is no propaganda in the United States. It was really weak from the Ukrainian side. We were not really addressing that in the US. Of course, the Ukraine itself has been struggling to keep the front line standing and to push Russians back, and was really locked in on the war here in Ukraine. Then what are we supposed to do in America? Besides the humanitarian initiatives, there was a strong necessity to find to build a structure, the institution that's capable of countering propaganda on a more organized level and actually lock in that as the primary objective. Ever since then, we've transitioned from only the protest movement to a larger operational scale, working through the advocacy, working through the media space, online, and of course, working with the community, continuing the rallies. We rebranded protests into rallies because we're not protesting against America. We are rallying for support of America for Ukraine, to build and consolidate support. And America is our key partner. That requires a competent approach to consolidate this support, consolidate them being on our side, rather than cause any divisions. And that's our focus right now.
Have Russians ever threatened you or your company members, or they will not dare to, and they are too cautious?
I mean, that happens sometimes. We are well prepared for any events like that, given the fact that if they try, I mean, they will have to face American law enforcement.
So you have a thick skin for that, and American law.
I think all Ukrainians do.
Yeah, absolutely. So your main focus is informational campaign. For you personally, what does success looks like? Is it a reports by a well-known figure, media, as you said previously about Forbes, a political statement, influence on a key vote related somehow to Ukraine, or changing the minds and language of undecided people?
Of course, changing the minds and language of the undecided people, that's one of the main focuses. We want to target the scale, get a lot of people consume our information that targets the propaganda. But of course, there's another vector, that is the advocacy and ensuring that there is co-sponsorships on the key bills associated with Ukraine. Only recently, we've since the new Trump administration came to power, we started working on building out the dialogue through addressing America's national security interests and America's interests. And there is this very strong message: America first. And that requires this approach seems to be very effective. It's really hard to get any piece of legislation through in Congress right now that involves Ukraine unless there is America involved. And I think that's the proper approach here. We need to build it out the way that it's beneficial for both sides, America and Ukraine. Therefore, one of the recent bills that we worked on is HR 1949, which is focused at unlocking domestic LNG production and export out of the United States, natural gas, basically, that would replace ultimately Russian gas on the market across the world. That would yet again deliver a strong economic blow to Russia, depleting their war machine, but also, most importantly for America, is benefit American economy, give America energy dominance across the world. So Ukraine is winning because Russia is losing money. America is winning because America is making money and strengthening its energy positions. And that approach is very effective.
Is it harder for you to work under Trump's administration after he took office, after this scandalous situation in February 2025, when Zelensky for the first time came to Washington, D.C.? Is it harder for you?
To be frank, I think it's actually easier.
Okay.
It's easier to build a dialogue with American lawmakers and the Trump administration who are not, who do not live in a fantasy, but rather see certain reality issues and like to address them. I think the progress is only possible if we expose certain issues and we try to address them and build out the dialogue and the proper cooperation between the countries in a way that's beneficial for all the sides involved and not solely altruism and Ukraine getting donations from the United States. That's not a long-term approach. The long-term approach is to ensure that there is a strong, beneficial partnership between both countries. And that's what we see as an organization. That's what we strive for. Bipartisan work, not only one of the sides. Bipartisan work is essential, and especially essential focusing on the GOP. If GOP is in power right now, and build out this dialogue. So I think it actually became a bit easier because things are more clear. We do not have bold expectations of each other. We reflect from real situation, see real issues, and address real issues altogether. So I would say that it's either the same or even a little bit easier right now.
Oleks, at the beginning you said that Russians operating through several networks, are they just limited by religious structures, or are they much broader, and maybe they connected, I don't know, through media and other companies?
Well, what I can say for sure throughout the years of us working in this field is that the most effective avenues that Russians do have at this point is the cultural direction and soft power, their so-called culture that they like to occasionally bring out and test out the patience of Ukrainian Americans here in the United States, see how we will react. And the second vector is this religious organization. So there is ROKOR, which is the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, which is directly connected to Russia. It has had Putin stopping by some years ago, and it's directly connected to FSB, a network that populates and prays for Russia as absurd as it may sound. And the second is the cultural soft power, so-called. They like to glorify their allegedly victory in the World War II, disregarding the Allies. The immortal regiment, their cult that they glorify their soldiers and repeat the terminology that they could repeat this in Ukraine, etc. I think that's very satirical at this point, given the fact that their war in Ukraine is taking longer than the entire World War II at this point, and they have not achieved any significant success. Their patriotic war has been at this point shorter than their war in Ukraine. These two vectors, the cultural vector and of course the religious vector, but it requires Ukrainians to counter this, because we have the senses for this. We understand when there is Russian influence and how to counter it. When we see Russian influence, when we see Russian cultural campaigns happening on the streets, that's more than just a culture. That's a culture that kills Ukrainians in this genocidal war, and it requires prompt reaction from Ukrainians. Expose it. And if you look deeper into any one of these groups, they're in one way or another connected to either Russian embassy or local Russian consulates, and funded from there as well. So meticulous approach could burn these things out step by step, and cooperation with American law enforcement, proper gathering of information and forwarding to them is an effective way to counter this influence.
Good you telling me that, because I remember in 2022, they were kind of silent. No Russian concerts dedicated to their, as you said, soft power. And then in 2024, I guess, everything has changed again, and they started to organize the events. And remember that Z on the plate of a Tesla car in Florida, or I don't know, I don't remember the particular state. So good you are tracking that, actually.
Yes, I would also say that it's those little triggers that they try to throw in to test out the reaction. It's not random. It's coordinated and it's on purpose. That's Putin's tactic. He likes to throw a drone in that country, do some escalation in another country, some provocation. He's testing out how far he can go. And our job as Ukrainian Americans in the United States is to ensure that we do not give them any room for this advancement.
Right. Regarding your protests on Times Square, do you have enough media coverage right now?
Unfortunately not. Obviously, Ukraine is not on the top newspapers, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing this. Our protests and rallies on Times Square and in other locations are carrying the purpose not only to inform the American public, but also present that we do not believe that this is okay, what's happening in Ukraine. That we're not sitting with our hands locked and not doing anything. If Putin attacks Ukrainian cities with missiles, with a barrage of missiles, with Oreshnik missile, we have to go out. We have to go out and not only deliver to Americans who are out there, thousands of them on Times Square, throughout our rally, see our posters and get our messages, but also to Ukrainians in Ukraine that we do not ignore these attacks, and we are holding our hand on pulse, tracking what's happening in Ukraine, and are ready to be the voice of Ukraine here across the ocean.
Speaking about that, what most demoralizes Ukrainians living in the US today, and what, on the contrary, brings them back together and restores, their strength?
I think there is a lot of concern about immigration issues in the United States. There's immigration instability right now, and many newcomers, Ukrainians who came here since the beginning of the full-scale war, are worried for their status in the United States. We try, as our organization tries to work through the Congress to advance certain legislation that can help with that. But that's probably one of the most demoralizing factors. Many Ukrainians are not certain. Many Ukrainians are afraid to be active participants of the activism. But I think what really consolidates and brings people together is reminding that this war is connected to us directly, that we have our families there, and that they count on us. If you're in America and you're a Ukrainian that came to America, you didn't come here to sit and work. and be ineffective. We have to be all together as a strong force that's fighting for American support for Ukraine, that's working towards building strong U.S.-Ukraine relations.
Yeah, so to summarize, Oleks, do you feel that there has been an overall shift in public attitudes towards Ukraine and Ukrainians in the United States, and in what direction?
I think it's just a natural evolution of this war and the narratives around this war. Of course, it has been shifting here and there, up and down, but our factor as Ukrainian Americans is to bring it back up and ensure the support is strong for Ukraine as ever. So we're working towards that. If something goes off and we get less support, there's additional propaganda, we quickly mobilize, confront it, counter it, and ensure that American support is back on track for Ukraine. And if it's not on track for Ukraine, that's not the issue of America, and that's important for us to keep that in mind. It's the issue of us. How well have we been communicating? How well have we been fighting for this support for of Americans? And if we do it right enough and very well, I think we'll be successful in that.
Oleks, thank you so much for what are you doing in the United States, and I wish you luck, and I wish your organization, Svitanok, and all your team luck, and I will wait for another video on Instagram and social media where you are exposing Russian propaganda. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!